Then you do.
All right, so we are officially live, and we are back. We got another fire episode for you guys today. You may have saw a change in the flyer. We decided to rebrand ourselves as the Stay Legal Podcast because we want you guys to stay legal, and we're going to talk about other stuff besides business. So today we actually wanted to react to a lot of the
Open the roof up on them.
Supreme Court decisions that has happened. But before we get to that, I want to just reintroduce the distinguished guests, attorneys from all across America, some international. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Attorney Burari, want to talk to the people?
Said talk to the people. Spinning Warrior, I'm licensed here in the great state of Indiana.
That's right.
You can find me at aaklaw.com.
Awesome, awesome. Uh, Attorney Whitley, you want to introduce yourself to the people?
Hello, everyone. My name is Attorney Jacoby Whitley. I'm currently driving around the DMV like I normally am. I'm happy to be here. I practice real estate law. To begin to that, well, you guys watch the podcast, but just in case, I do real estate law, small business related law. My office touches on immigration. We handle some civil litigation as well, and of course, the infamous estate plan. And we're getting bigger and bolder as we continue to go on in this beautiful journey in the law. Great for having us here today. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Attorney Whitley is practicing law as he's doing the podcast. So you getting a
No,
lot of
like, like legit. I'm actually waiting for a client. Claire's probably taking the client call at the moment. Yeah, actually, that's legit.
So you get a live reaction right here. All right, Attorney Mayumbo Banza. You want to introduce yourself to the people? To 1 minute. 1 minute.
Good morning,
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Tony Banza, Chicago. I am, uh, in a particularly different where I practice in civil area law. Great here. It's going to be one good session. I anticipate as always. And, thank you.
All right, Attorney. Thank you, Attorney Ali Banza, from the great state of Illinois. Yeah, my name is Attorney Justin Camper. I'm a criminal defense attorney, located in Indiana, along with Attorney Burari. And so, yeah, we was going by Small Business Saturday podcast. Now we want to just talk about some other stuff. And I think we're gonna really bring a lot of good content for you guys who've been listening. I know we got a lot of people who listen after the live show, and so we thank you guys for tuning in, listening, comment, and sharing, and we really appreciate it. So today we wanted to talk about recent Supreme Court decisions, and we had three really big decisions that are really big, and they really going to affect how things are going to go moving forward. And we are licensed attorneys, and we wanted to just give our reaction to them. I wanted to, if one of you guys can just talk about, because I know everybody may not be familiar with the Supreme Court and why is it so important when the Supreme Court makes a decision. I wonder if one of you guys can just briefly talk about what is the impact that happens when the Supreme Court, makes a decision.
Well, I'll jump out there. So basically, in a nutshell, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land at the federal level. So the buck stops there. Without getting into the complexity of how you get a case certified for the Supreme Court and whatnot, but it's a court of limited jurisdiction. They refuse cases all the time. So if your case makes it to the Supreme Court, it is the highest court of the land, and that court decision will become what we know in the attorney field as precedent. So your case will become a case that other decisions are modeled after, or that attorneys look to in making assessments related to their clients. They're going to look to the precedent from cases from the Supreme Court. And it just in a quick nutshell, I think that's kind of why it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, the Supreme Court sets the standard. What us lawyers do, we don't create the law, right? And a lot of times people think that's what we do, but we don't create law, right? We actually cite to the law, and we make arguments based off of what the law already says and try to advance our client's interests. So a lot of times when we have our clients come with our problems, we're saying, "Hey, here's the law. Here's what the court has said." Now you can always appeal certain decisions until you get to the Supreme Court, and so that's why it's so important because what they say pretty much goes. That means that all of Shannon's cases around that issue, he's going to. You guys still hear me good?
Yeah, you back.
Okay. Yeah. So all Attorney Rory's cases that that he has around these issues that Supreme Court decided, he has to cite to that now. But the true lawyering comes in where you try to interpret the law, and when there's a gray area, you try to finagle it in the interest of your client. But for the most part, we gotta stand strong on what the Supreme Court says. So that's why it's so important. So the Supreme Court came out with three big decisions. I'll save the biggest one, the most controversial one, the affirmative action one, for the end. I want to go through some quicker ones. Let's talk about the religious rights decision that came through. So recently, the Supreme Court has just decided that for a business owner, she was trying to. There was she refused service to a same sex couple because I guess her services, she does websites, and they wanted her to create a website for their wedding, and in regards to their wedding, and she said, "Hey, that actually goes against my religious beliefs." And so, because that goes against my religious beliefs, I can't do that. And so I forgot the name of the rights group, but the rights group said, "Hey, that's wrong." And she actually did technically violate. I think it was in Connecticut or Colorado, not mistaken, one of those C states. And there was a law says you can't discriminate against someone who is you can't discriminate someone based off of their sexual preference, which is so that's why uh this suit began, and it made it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court just decided that that web designer actually does have the right to refuse service based off of religious beliefs, that she has a First Amendment right to speech, and that speech can be abridged because of someone's sexual preference. So I just want to get your initial reaction to this. Attorney Barari, what was your reaction to this? Do you think the Supreme Court made the right call on this?
I think it was an interesting decision, and I think the reason I think it's interesting is because they took a First Amendment approach as to basically back why the business owner um, was able to say whether or not she would design the website. Now, without getting too far into it, we know that there are certain classes that the Supreme Court has delegated or relegated as protected classes. And based on where issues fall within those classes, you're subject to certain levels of scrutiny. We know that you can't discriminate based on race, gender, all of that, because that's first class, and well, it's subject to strict scrutiny. It's a protected class. But
Right.
I think the Supreme Court was creative in their decision by saying that this is not discrimination based on uh, this person's sexual orientation. Rather, this individual has a First Amendment right to decide as a business owner what they will and will not basically say and or post. So for me, that was different. But I think it does open up. It opens up for sure. I'll call it a can of worms for lack of a better term, because I think it was a new way, if you will, to discriminate in cases brought by a company that seek to deny same-sex couples uh, based on symbols, words of expression, etc., etc. So I think it was a roundabout way for them to reach the conclusion. However, I also think in the same vein, if I'm a truly private entity, I should be able to do what I want.
Yeah, I think I kind of I agree with your sentiments here. Attorney Ali Banza, what was your thoughts when this decision came through?
Yeah, it's an interesting approach by the court. And again, this is always going to be one of those where there's not a straight answer. Uh, but to for the sake of our viewers, um, that this decision came from this lady who was actually she's called 303 Creative LLC. She was worried about whether the law of Colorado or the state of Colorado was going to compel her to include on her website that she will accommodate all and everyone um, with respect to the service she was designing for marriage and stuff. Because there is a law in Colorado that speaks to public accommodation, preventing folks from denying the full and equal enjoyment of its, goods and services to all and every customer. Uh, and she was actually seeking injunction. Like if I do this, then I don't want the state of Colorado to force me to speak about something that I do not necessarily believe in. And I can say that with all due respect, she can accommodate anyone she wants to, or she can respect anyone she wants to respect. But should the state of Colorado be put in a position to force her to speak, force her speech, that becomes a problem. I do not want to carry a T-shirt that say I support satanic worshiping when I am a deacon at uh some church. Right? It's pretty much like you telling Bishop T.D. Jakes to add a message on the website, including X, Y, and Z, when he doesn't necessarily believe in that. And that's where the tweak is. She did not say anything, but she was worried that at some point, based on existing law, right, and that is Colorado statute 24, section 24, 34, 601, 2A, that speaks to public accommodation. Yes, you can accommodate everybody, um, but you're not going to force me to say something on my web that I do not believe in. So that's where I kind of that's how I see it, at least.
Yeah. And the Supreme Court has ruled similarly in other situations, whether it was a baker trying to bake, a cake for, being forced to bake a cake for same-sex couples, who, and it goes against his religious beliefs. For Jehovah Witnesses being forced to salute a flag because it goes against their religious beliefs. I did think that the whole idea of it being speech was a very interesting argument. I think to me, and I'll let you guys go, but I think the better argument was that it violated um, the First Amendment right to the free exercise of religion. It's almost like you're telling someone to do something that goes against their religion. Um, but I don't know. Maybe they won the case. I guess that's what matters at the end of the day. But what are you guys' thoughts on that? Do you think this is more of a speech thing or a religious thing?
I do think it was speech because they were saying, you must basically put up or design this website and include words that we're requesting you include in the website, right? And then for you to say, now I think you do have a freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, freedom, that those arguments too. But I think it was a First Amendment, right? Like, well, you can't tell me what I must say and what I must not say. And I'm the business owner, I'm the creative, right? So you can't sit up here and be like, yes, you have to do that, and it has to say this, because I think that is freedom of speech. If I don't want to say it, I can gladly say take your services elsewhere, right? And I think that's what the opinion. I think that's the way it reads, right? It basically says, look, as a business owner, I have a right to, if this is my product, you're asking me to put my stamp of approval on it, right? And we're all attorneys here. So I think in a certain vein, we kind of do the same thing, right? We have the ability to deny cases that we want to take,
Right.
based on certain fact patterns, based on certain, or just maybe
we don't like the client.
Like the client, right? And you have the right to refuse and work. I think that's what they're saying. In any event, I'm a business owner. You're asking me to use my creative juices to create a website, cake. I think there was a case out of Colorado about same-sex couples that sued for cakes, and the Supreme Court said you can't force them to make a cake. So I think it's that same vein. Like, if I'm a creative, I don't think you can force me to bend the knee at your request. I'm not entitled to do that.
Right. We do have a comment here. We got a comment. It said from Alexander, say yes, for religious rights, private businesses have rules all the time, whether it's a religious entity or not. Prime example is some business have dress codes. Oh, that's a really good comment there. I'll let you respond, Attorney Ali.
It's more like this case would have been different if the business had a website that had a message on it, stating I do not support polygamists, for example, right? And then a conglomeration of polygamists said, no, you can't say that. That sends hate to us. You don't have business with that. What does that speech on your website say versus to our community, right? And things of that nature. So the huge success of her case is more or so she has not said anything and she can be compelled to state in it. And I think that one's freedom or one's claims of rights cannot infringe on my personal belief, where in the sanctity of my person on it. And again, this is never a cut and dry or white and black situation. There's always going to be a lot of blur lines in here. Whatever we said today can be connected with completely different set of facts. One tweak can completely change the whole narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But again, though, like for me, I think if I'm a private entity, a private actor, I just can't see how the government can come in and compel you to do something like that anyway, right? If I'm a truly private entity, I'm a truly a private actor. You can't force me. That's why biker clubs and Hell's Angels, right? I mean, it's the Ku Klux Klan. They're private entities. They get no money from the government. They're able to enact or restrict membership, involvement, what they will and what they won't do. They're
Mhm.
able to do that. And I think the government, so I think the Supreme Court got it right in saying we can't force private actors to do something that they don't want to do. And they
Right.
really can't. I think she just said, I'm not designing websites for same sex couples. And they sued her for that. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, she has the right to act in the manner in which she chooses. And I think that's okay. If it was a public actor, public entity, if the company received funds from the government, I think that's different.
Right.
Be a
Right.
truly private sector.
Right.
I think that's government overreach at that point. But the government come in and tell truly private businesses what to do.
Right. Right. And I'll hand it to you, Attorney Willie. I just had a couple comments before I hand it to you. So, I think what I'm getting from Attorney Ferrari is that this is not really about religion. This is just about speech. It could be, hey, I don't want to refuse someone because of whatever. We shouldn't be able to, refuse somebody. We shouldn't be able to force someone to provide a service. Period. Now, here's my thoughts. The dissenting opinion and a lot of what I heard from commentary was that sexual preference is a protective class. So because it's a protected class, it deserves a higher standard, and that this could be the I'm trying to think of the right word, but just the doorway to a lot of other discrimination towards this particular protected class. What do you say to that, Attorney Willie?
I can see that argument why people are leery of that door. We're going to get to the same thing with the affirmative action case, or similar situation. It's just that. So what Shannon is alluding to, we were talking about this before the case, right? Before the podcast, is that yes, this looks like a protected class situation. However, the actual argument is based on freedom of speech and whether you can compel someone to assign themselves or to accept a speech slogan or something like that, or express it even though it belongs to someone else, right? This is not, oh, you are a gay couple, so I wanted to not do business with you because you're a gay couple. Now, like you were saying in your question, is this a way to kind of do underhanded discrimination, kind of in a sense? Sure. But there's plenty of laws that do that. That's the way the law works, right? like Shannon brought up Hell's Angels, right? They sat down with their lawyers. Let's just say, assuming that Hell's Angels is a group that does not want minority members, right? They sat down with their lawyers and said, how do we accomplish that, right, in a legal manner that would not expose us to litigation, right? And so they basically said, well, you can't refuse because of this, or you can't refuse because of that. But sure, you can refuse because of this. And most Black people have that trait or have that situation. So, of course, you'll be able to exclude them from the membership. That, and we're going to get into this with affirmative action. That's what the judges were talking about, that America's segregated anyway, right? And people use the backside of laws to still accomplish different means of segregation. So yes, will this open a door for companies refusing to work with gay couples more often? Absolutely. But is this necessarily a law, or the decision, was it designed to promote that? No. This decision was designed to protect businesses from having to be compelled, I think the decision kept referring to compel them to accept someone else's speech, right? And because it was positioned that way, it's legal. But this is what the law is positioning things on this side of the fence or that side of the fence.
Right.
So, I mean, it's yes, to answer your question, yes, it opens the door for further discrimination against gay couples, right?
But I think the cake case did that, right? So this is not doing anything different than the cake case did. That cake when they refused.
And I can see that point.
Right.
That this did not open the door, right?
It
just kind of kept
it was already out.
Close it. Like
They just used a different avenue. They used freedom of speech, First Amendment this time, but it was already out there. The precedent was already out there.
Right.
So, but this also, to get into it, companies will also, this also gives let's say, Black Lives Matter.
You beat me to it.
Right? So let's say you got a t-shirt website company.
I'm a print
right?
company.
And you're like, look, I do all Black Lives Matter. I want you to build my website. Now a company can say, well, I don't believe that. So I'm not doing it.
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, I don't really see the big harm in that. But
and then
yeah.
a little bit of background information to this is that she was willing, and we're talking about this particular case. Not only she was willing to work with everyone, regardless of their race, sexual orientation, background, whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
What she was not going to do is forced to produce designs that speaks to certain things that she's not supportive of, or that is not biblical. Her faith.
We lost attorney.
But I will take this opportunity though. On the other hand, this does give LGBTQ friendly businesses the opportunity to get that business.
Exactly. I mean,
right?
I this is more of a business counseling session versus law, but you're back, Mayambo. But it was just, I think that you're exactly right, and that's the beauty of capitalism, is that you get to choose who you want to do business with. And if someone is discriminating against protected class, and we're like, hey, we don't like this person, hey, let's put them out of business. Let's stop serving it. Let's stop going there. We have that right as Americans, but every country doesn't have that. Go ahead, Attorney Bonds. I know you had a point that you were going to finish. Attorney Bonza. You can't hear us. You can't hear us? Okay. Well,
I didn't mean to do all that. I was just trying to make a point in the dead air.
We'll sign you out, sign back in, because you can't hear us. So, yeah. All right, Attorney Bonza, you there? Okay. Well, we'll keep going. Let's see. What's Attorney Bonza?
Okay. All right.
Can you hear us?
My man got a complicated setup.
We'll keep going. He'll try.
I'm here now. I just can't see myself. It's just this whole thing.
You're on mute, Shannon.
No, I'm just saying we're not here to see you, bro. Can you hear us? Is the question. Just talk. Get your point out so we can get on to this student loan relief.
All right. So So I think that there's some good points that was brought up in that, and I think that we definitely can learn a lot from it. And I'm pretty sure that Attorney Browery is going to be citing to that decision real soon, representing his business owner. So, okay, so let's talk about the student loan relief. Essentially, what had happened. We got a comment here. If you guys have any comments, you're listening, feel free to write. So if it doesn't interfere with the right to life, I don't see the problem with rules a business choose. Yeah, I think and Shannon, I know Attorney Barari, anybody can chime in. Isn't that title what Title 9 is for? I believe. I think it's Title 9, where if it's like in regards to like housing, essential services, you can't deny someone because of their preferences or background or race or ethnicity or anything like that. when it comes to like essential services, but like other things doesn't fall under that. Am I right in my interpretation of that?
Uh, I think Title IX isn't that the education? I think that's discrimination in education, but I think you're right along those same. You're. I think what you're alluding to is correct, but I just think Title IX is the discrimination in education. I think that's where Title IX allowing women in sports, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I think that's Title IX.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely uh look into that more if you feel I have any questions about it. But I'm pretty sure if you're providing essential services, you can't deny people. That's like the exception. There's always exceptions to every rule, but that's like the exception to a rule. Like if you have an apartment complex and you're like, hey, this is only for straight people, like
I think that's seven. I think that's Title VII.
okay, it's Title VII. I got my numbers mixed up. If you're providing essential services, that doesn't apply to you. You have to service pretty much everybody. Um, that's within that protected class. So we'll move on. So let's talk about student loan relief, and we don't really have much about it. I know that Attorney Buhari paid off all his loans, so this doesn't really apply to him. But
I will.
but
Impressive.
recently, President Joe Biden tried to implement an executive action that um, an executive action that said that hey, if you are making under 125,000 a year, we're going to go ahead and just dismiss $10,000 worth of your. I think it's up to $10,000 or $20,000 worth of your student loans. The Supreme Court said, actually, President Joe Biden, you don't have the authority to do that. I believe they were saying that should have been done through a legislative body. So, and then I think just like a day or two ago, I think yesterday or two ago, President Biden tried something else where they basically said that if you are under the student income repayment program, I forgot the exact name for it, where you make 20 to 25 payments consistently, you've been doing it throughout the years, that they would go ahead and resolve your student loans. But they were saying that there were some issues with that, and certain people didn't get their loans dismissed, and so they're dismissing up to $800,000 worth, or 800,000 people. I'm sorry, who had those issues. Was it 800,000 people or loans? I think I forgot. I got to double check.
There's
But
80,000 people.
800,000 people, right? Who technically did do the student loan forgiveness program, right? But there were some issues in that. President Biden is going to try to work those out and help those people. But what are you guys' thoughts on that, for the Supreme Court to say that, hey, President Biden, you don't have the right to just say, hey, loans be gone? What are you guys' thoughts on that? Do you think they made the right call on that one?
The call is wrong, right? The call is wrong because you have to find a way to help your citizens, your constituents, you know, to deal with their everyday basis. Everybody have to pay back their loan because it shows a responsibility. You borrow, you have to pay back, right? And but also in terms of how life is going on at the time of the very situation or the case, you have to look at, we just got a pandemic, right? Most people lost their job and a lot of stuff. And I don't even know what the unemployment rate is right now, right? Every president comes in, makes a bid, and want to stick with it and promise, right? If you look at it, all this money, we're not saying that they wipe out all the loan, right? And I'm not saying that the American people are saying wipe out all the loan, right? Assist the people, just like you dedicate funds to food stamp and everything else. Assist those who have gone to school and earn a degree so they can be valuable on a job market as good folks, right? And then just do that. I don't think this is all. The bottom line is it's a politicized situation, depending on who is in court at the time. If there is a wave of conservative or wave of conservative Republicans that are now dealing with a president that is not necessarily a conservative or Republican, right? And things like that happen. You flip it around, right? And I'm going to ramble a little bit here, and bear with me. You flip it around. How much money have been spent on Ukraine? About over $75 billion, right? And how much money was spent on Iraq alone, right? That's 7.57 billion. And you go to Afghanistan, and that's 2.3.1 trillion, right? Spent on those wars alone. But then that is just not it's literally a fraction of what folks owe in this here. So I mean it's kind of sad where because of partisanship or because of a personal belief or identification, you want to steer, all right, a certain case in a certain direction and not in a way to approach it holistically, right? I mean, it, and again, it's not about not being able to pay the loans, right? The president made a promise. Let him go through the promise. Let him accomplish it. Now you defeating him, making him look like a jerk. I saw some speeches over there saying that, hey, Mr. Barton, you better have it straight. We need another plan, otherwise we are going to swing to Republican. That's exactly what they wanted to have, right? What they said 2024 is coming around, right? So you see all these folks here, they have to pay the bills, but he made a promise. He has to come through. Let him get through something like that. So that's my my approach on that one.
So your argument is because he made a promise, they should just let it go, essentially.
They should let it go. If it wasn't Mr. Trump, he would have forced his way into it and he would have gotten his way.
So I mean, to me, it sounds like, and I could be wrong, but it sounds. Well, I think what you're saying is what he did was a good thing, right? Because it was a good thing, they should just let it go. Because overall, it's better for society. So you're saying that because he did a good thing, they should just push it through. Okay.
Yeah.
So
they're wiping out loans. If you work in nonprofit organization, depending on your major, after 5 years or 10 years, you get your loans wiped out.
Right.
It's
See here, Attorney Bonds, I just want to read this question and anybody else can chime in, or this quote. I'm sorry. Justice Roberts said, the question here is not whether something should be done. It is who has the authority to do it. And I think the argument they're making is that, hey, we're the Supreme Court.
Right. Yep.
We are here to interpret the law the best based off of what we feel the Constitution says. So we're not here to vote on whether we think this is a good thing or not. We're here to provide structure and order for the land. And so they're saying that what he did was an incorrect procedure, and they need to do it correctly if they want it to go through. What do you guys thought on that?
They tried to say the same thing when Obamacare came up. They trying to attack the lady saying that it was an incorrect procedure. The same thing, like we said earlier in our other topic. They will take one piece of a thing or law or whatever case, tweak it around. I mean, they sit around and read a bunch of cases, and they have the ability to do that. They will twist it around and give another narrative. And that's what it is. The same thing happened to Obamacare. Now they're saying that it's a wrong procedure. Okay, it's a wrong procedure. We can go back again. Mr. Biden is going to put the same thing in and do the right procedure. This is all political. It has nothing to do with the substantive piece of it.
Okay. All right.
I agree with John Roberts. And I'm going to keep mine brief. I'm not going to ramble. The reason I think it's overreach is because I think if Biden is basically saying that he had particularly or maybe potentially wrote a check that he can't cash, right? And that was the student loan relief. However, I think you do need Congress's okay or some sort of legislative action in order to implement that plan. I don't think because you're in the executive position, the executive branch, right? I don't think the executive branch has the power to make laws. And I think that's Congress. And I think this was going to be a law. Well, he tried to entwine it into the Heroes Act, but I think he was basically trying to make a law that said if you are of X, Y, or Z, then you're subject to ABC. And I think that's outside of the president's wheelhouse. That's Congress's job. And I think the Supreme Court basically said this is not your job to make laws. You're the president of the United States. You don't make them, right? That's what Congress does. We interpret, and you drop cocaine off in office and stuff like that. That's your job as president.
Attorney Willie, did you have any final thoughts on this?
Sure. I kind of, me, bro. I find commonalities and things. So I definitely see my uncle's point or Attorney Baza's point. And the same thing with Attorney Buari. Now, the recent alleged ethics violations from the Supreme Court, the fact that Trump was able to push through high-level Supreme Court justices, right? And we were able to see that happen before our eyes. Has given more credence and more people that will subscribe, that are right to subscribe to Mr. Attorney Mbanza's point that this is a very political decision, right? However, on the other side of that coin, I see Attorney Buari's position and the fact that the crazy, but look, they didn't have the authority to do this, right? It looks like they tried to go through the Secretary of Education and say that the Secretary of Education waived a right that they had. That's very sloppy, right? If you were going to do it, I think you should have had it's a certain office. I think it's the Office of the Attorney for the President or something like that. Research this, right? And maybe, again, when your campaign decided to use this as a platform stance, right, you should have researched how you could
it sounded good. Why research? It sounds good.
Implement it, right?
Right.
Whether that could have been an executive order, but how does everybody's going to say that, because this goes back to checks and balances and how our country is designed, right? Mm-hmm. And so every branch of government, executive, legislative, and judicial, has their own powers, right? And that's what the court is basically saying, is that Biden overreached the powers of the executive office. Biden tried to say, no, it's within the executive office because we went through the Secretary of State. So that's Secretary of Education. That's my cabinet. That's me, baby. That's how they tried to right. to do it. Right. But I think they should have had a more legislative approach. Back to my Attorney Mbanza's side, as the leader of the Democratic Party, he also had the ability to get the Democratic Party together to craft some type of legislation or work with Congress a little bit to get that accomplished. So I don't necessarily think that the Supreme Court decision is baseless and is just an awful decision because it's based on nothingness. Again, they use the law maybe in a political way to reach this decision, but I think the decision is grounded in the law, and it breaks down from the separation of powers. And the question became, did the executive branch have the power to do this? And their argument was like the secretary had the right to waive laws or regulations, and it just wasn't strong enough for the Supreme Court. Now, could the Supreme Court have been have a political motive behind it? The decision, sure, but they were able to craft an argument to make their decision. Now, if you have the power of the president, you should have had your legal team make sure that was covered. And that's why I think that's the issue. I don't really think, and that's what people should be mad about, is the preparation. And now it seems like a off-the-cuff campaign promise that didn't fall through. And like Attorney Bonzo said, it makes him susceptible to attacks from his opponents.
Right. Yeah, I think, you know, if you want to talk about politics, sometimes it looks good just trying and being able to point the blame like, hey, I tried. It's because of the other party that it didn't go through. So, you know, I'm sure all of this was strategic.
Yeah, I feel you, bro. But I think people are hip to that game now, right? Because like most things, like big law, most big things, most institutions, right? They adjust slow, right? So they run the same play for years, and they don't get the news that it doesn't work anymore. There's a delay there because they're so large and kind of archaic. But I just think that doesn't work anymore. You just can't make the promise and just fall completely flat and not expect people to ask questions.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's trying. I think, like I said, a day or two ago, he's trying to do it a different way. So, I mean, he's gonna keep trying. But you know, the Supreme Court had to do what they do, which is interpret the law the best way they could. So let's move forward. We got another big case that came out was the affirmative action. So affirmative action, just a little brief history on it. It was, you know, basically for to remedy against past racial discrimination, and I guess affirmative action nowadays has been used for everything, any and everything. But the original where it came from, the origins was like Brown versus Board of Education, where you know separate is not equal. Hey, these white Southern schools aren't allowing black kids in. We're going to force you. Like, no, you have to take in, you know, a certain amount of black kids, right? Some sort of quota that has expanded. There was a Michigan case. I forgot when that was ruled on, but it was a Michigan case where they said you can't, because they was using it in college admissions. Can you consider race and whether someone gets accepted into a school for college admissions? So the Supreme Court said yes and no. They basically said it can't be the sole factor why someone comes, but it can be a factor why someone comes. Correct. Well, now the Supreme Court has ruled that it shouldn't be. Basically, you can't use race as a factor because they're saying that it's a lot of things they were saying, but basically it was discriminating against other races, and you know it was making things unfair, yada yada yada. So I know I just kind of dumbed it down a little bit. So if you guys want to, you know, go into more detail, feel free. But what are your thoughts on this most recent Supreme Court decision, basically saying that affirmative action college admissions, when it comes to race, shouldn't be applied?
All right, I'm gonna jump out here just saying on Shannon got to go, so I'm gonna go because I had some thoughts about this, right? So basically, I think what people are afraid of is this decision is going to throw us back in time to the era of segregation, right? And here comes the shocking soundbite. Let's do it.
Wasn't expecting that.
This is what I mean by that, right? Because during the period of segregation, right, you had the mergers of Black Wall Street. You probably had the largest concentration, other than now, of the most Black millionaires or the financial equivalent of the time. We were thriving in our segregated communities, right? Just like most communities. Because when we break it down, the segregation is like a primal thing. Because it's like segregation by default. right? I want to be around likeness, right? I want to be around people that look like me. I want to be around people that think like me. I want to be around people that come from me, come from where I come from. So we automatically on a very like reptilian brain, basic survival mode, segregate ourselves, right? We pick teams is what we do. Right now, higher levels of consciousness can break out of that, but at a certain level, segregation happens, especially in America. And economically, though, that's very good. And historically, that has been very good for Black people, economically, with segregation. Now, what I think the government's position is, and that's what I think the justice was talking about, color blindness, right? Is that we cannot act like segregation isn't a default position for the country. The question is it's in the country's best interest, national interest, to be segregated? Or is integration the best for the national interest? And I think that's where we get into the weird American experiment, right? And it has to be a balance of both, right? I think that groups should be segregated, right? I think we need to invest more in HBCUs, Hampton University, the real HU, hello,
Right,
and other
HBCU in the house.
HBCUs that I will not mention, right? But I do support, right? So I think and that's the same thing with the Asian community, right? If you look at again, I'm not a member of the Asian community. I'm not trying to be insensitive, right? And I'm not a historian on Asian history, right? However, you look at Chinatowns, right? I think that's a messed up name, but let's use them because that's what we use. They're Asian communities that thrive because they relied on themselves and were forced to because of the racial segregation at the time. Attorney Mbonza, you're in Chicago. I think that's documented as the most segregated city in the United States. But each little pocket, though, got their culture. They're going to have their restaurants, they're going to have their stores, and they're going to be authentic. So if you are willing to explore or want to get experience that culture, you can in a very authentic manner because the segregation allowed that culture to thrive and be itself and not be diluted in the ways that integration has, right? And that's where you get our Malcolm arguments sometimes, right? But here's the thing. Because America is a nation, so I do think we need to respect people's individualities and cultures and allow segregation to nurture that. But we need to find a way that we integrate and weave all these cultures together as a country to best benefit, as my notes say, 1 second as I refer to my notes, promote the sharing of ideas in economics. You see what I'm saying? Because that will promote the national interest. So it needs to be a balance of segregation and integration in this country to really have the country live up to its full potential. And I know this case is like we say, opening doors. I think people fear that's going to open doors for discrimination and segregation. And you're right. But at the same time, I think there's an opportunity there to grow communities, the Latin community, Asia community, the Black community, African diaspora community, just the diaspora community, just to grow, not to say that they're different, somebody's gonna get in there, but anyway, to grow these and strengthen these communities and then have them interact with each other so our nation can benefit from the ideas and the knowledge and the economics that come from these communities without diluting them and still able to appreciate them and then held to the world that we're a gem and a jewel to the world because of how we accept our differences and use those to our strength, which is, I think, is the real American experiment. What religious tolerance and the melting pot of America, what that experiment was supposed to really produce. This case actually gives us the opportunity to do that. and invest in HBCUs and other segregated businesses. And I think it will actually work out if we can find a way to nationally not let it tear us apart, but bring us together, if that makes sense. And that's just my point.
All right, man. I felt like I was at a HBC right there. That was like a speech.
Oh, I am an HBCU. Don't ever get it twisted. Y'all know me. I'm at
Oh man, I got a whole lot of thoughts. I'm trying to contain myself though. So, Attorney Burari, go ahead.
So I agree with everything Kobe just said. For me, I think this is probably the one time that I would concur with Justice Thomas, right? And the fact
Whoa, wait, you gotta do like that's like historical, bro. You gotta do
one time that I would actually agree. And this is why I say that, right? So we all graduated from a law school that was not in one of the most diverse parts of the country, right? But for African Americans being in the law school, there would probably be no diversity. And this was not Harvard. This was not Notre Dame. This was Valparaiso University School of Law, right? Tier 4 law school, no longer in existence. And yet, at least my 1L year, people would say the only reason you're here is because of affirmative action, right?
Really? Someone told you that?
We were here.
Bruh, what you mean?
But,
wow.
So here's the thing. There's a, I would say, call it a negative connotation and or stigma associated with affirmative action, right? So you immediately disregard the fact that I graduated with a 3.5 GPA from college. You immediately disregard that I had a 150 plus on the LSAT. The only reason I'm here is because you know this program and it exists, and therefore you're using that to justify why I'm sitting in the same classroom with you, why I'm walking these halls with you, and why I might get out in the real world and be yet a better practicing attorney. So if you get rid of a program like that, now that can't be your crutch, your crux. And on the flip side, right, I think there is a disservice aspect of trying to quote unquote meet quota, right? So if I'm accepting kids from different backgrounds, different ways of life, just to make meet, let's say, that diversity quota, are these kids really developed and ready to be put in this particular institution, right? And I think part of that, and again, we started with who knows how many minorities my 1L year. By the time we graduated, some of them have flunked out. So they were there because they met the quota, but
Right.
they weren't even ready. So I have a 0.7 GPA after my 1L year, $60,000 in additional student loan debt, and now I can't even go back to law school because I failed out, right? But you only let me in because you had to meet this quota. So, and I've read his book, Clarence Thomas's book, but he talked about his experience when he was at Yale, right? Never mind the fact he was one of the top students. He was always told the only reason you're here is because programs let Black people into these types of schools, right? And I think by having that in place, it diminishes the true value that minorities bring to the table. It diminishes my accomplishments, right? You're saying I'm not as good as you. The only reason why I'm here is because there's a program in place that says you need to have 20 Black people come to whatever. Yeah. So again, it'll probably never happen again. But I think it was the one time I agreed with Justice Thomas, right? But on the other side of that coin, I do see where it could open up, I'll call it Pandora's box, right? Now, I think it was Roberts who penned it and said there's other factors we can look at. We can look at ways of life. We can look at upbringing. We can look at economic status. We can look at other factors. You just don't have to use race to be the determining factor in whether or not a person is admitted, right? I mean, and I said on the admissions committee at Valpo, for the time, they had a point system.
Right.
you were allocated more points if you were of a minority. Right?
Right.
But what I would always say is, how do we know that this person is going to get here and thrive?
Right.
Let's not just throw points at them because they checked the black box or the Asian box or the Hispanic box on the law school application. Let's make sure this person can actually thrive in these particular positions. So I agree with Kobe, right? That I think if it's true that we can no longer get into PWIs because affirmative action is gone, there are Hamptons, Howards,
Right.
and other institutions that can rival. You know, we saw what Primetime did at Jackson State, right? And we saw how upset people got when people started leaving some of the PWIs to go to Jackson State. So, I again, if I lose followers, if I lose fans, if I lose clients, forgive me. But it truly is the one time that I did agree with Justice Clarence Thomas's dissent.
Okay. Um, man, it's a lot there, man. I don't even know where to where to even begin. Y'all didn't
You
say a
know,
whole
yeah, and
bunch of
I would
stuff.
even because since we were calling things from Valpo, right? I remember having conversations with Amanda, right? Because I was trying to elucidate non-black people of the black experience to try to bridge gaps through understanding, right? And one thing I would explain to her is like me, so I would assume more black people felt this way too, that if we got a question wrong in class or didn't answer it to the standard, one of the things that I would float, oh man, they're gonna think that I'm just here because of affirmative action. And that's a random pressure that burdens you. Like, I mean, that's in like, do we need to have that pressure in the issue of or the existence of affirmative action brought some good things and gave a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, because it was in effect so long, and I think that's another reason why the judges made the decision that they made. There was no set time frame on when it would end. That it had been gone so long in
Right.
history that it became a double-edged sword. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're gonna
Right.
be a victim of affirmative action just because you black.
Right. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'm still trying to process
Fight
Shannon.
back, hire black
Shannon.
attorneys.
All right, right. Yeah. Attorney Burari agrees with Justice Thomas. Attorney Willie saying that segregation is good. I'm trying. I'm trying to.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
attorney
process.
Mbonza wants to kill us both.
Wait. What do you say, Attorney Bonza? I don't. I'm waiting. I've been hearing controversial stuff all for the last few minutes. I need to know what you're gonna say.
This has been a tragedy in the history of the um, advancement of the very equal protection clause that we all believe as a nation. And I see a self-distracting um, Supreme Court, which is distracting the country because my fear is always that when a conservative or Republican gets in the office, and then there's a chance to put in a conservative justice, then going to destroy what has existed in the past as a law and switch it just to stick it to your face and say, okay, we switched that when we set in, we switched that when this Republican government or president came through. I mean, we all know that this country has never been colorblind, is not colorblind, and likely will never be colorblind. It's not a random situation, it's been institutionalized, systematically inflicted upon everyone that way. And to that point, I said I disagree completely with Justice Thomas. With all due respect, I disagree. Why do I disagree? It's a perception matter. Whether they know that I mean this place because of my race, it's a perception. So be it. But guess what? I am a citizen of this country. I pay tax. And then guess what? I am allowed to go into this institution so that when I'm done with this institution, they will put it on the wall and say that so and so of this minority community also went to Harvard. I don't care how they look at me. They're going to look at me down anyways, one way or the other.
Or you
If
only
they,
went to Harvard because you're black.
no, no, I'm not. I'm not saying that. Harvard, I'm not saying that.
And I do have a Jay-Z quote for that. I don't know if this is gonna mess you up, Justin, but just because you in a coupe, you should the nigga in the coupe. But
No, here's the thing. I am not saying that. I'm gonna go in because of that. Speaking of Harvard, Harvard has two processes. The first process in admission, they look at the extracurricular activity. They look at things like commitment. They look like your record and your score and everything. There's one other aspect that is called the overall, and in the overall factor, there's a sub factor of it, which is race, among other things. So your grades and everything, your extracurricular activity, your personality as an individual is already screened by the first team for the first time. Now the second team is going to screen based on the overall factors, race being one of them. It's been the law in this country that race can be a factor in the admission process, and it must be narrowly tailored. And when they say narrowly tailored, it means that it has to have a starting point and ending point, compelling interest. That's what it means there. What it is that it's allowed to cure past discriminating impact of a particular institution. Now, name one institution, education institution in this country that has not had discriminating patterns in admission. Then I will say, okay, I'll shut up and just get off this webcast, because all and every single one of them. Let me finish. All and every single one of them. Say it again.
Alabama A&M.
Okay. Well, maybe that's a history thing. So,
but wait, and I'm gonna let you finish, Chief. But here's my issue with that, real quick though. I think
I'm losing my thoughts.
Okay, go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
I apologize. I'm losing my thoughts. So name one institution that hasn't been okay. Then I will get back to the Alabama thing too, because I have an argument now about it. But the thing is this. Even fire department, proven cut and clear. City of Harvey instead of Illinois. There was a lawsuit back in the days. Why? Because they will not hire qualified minority employees, and they lost. So here's the thing. Here is the thing. You say, okay, fine, and this is me trying to fight with Kobe a little bit. You say, fine, let's go to these schools. No, they're gonna make sure that these schools struggle to get funding, and the teachers are going to run away from them, and then be forced to go to these schools, all right, and then get any. We see it in the high school, in the elementary school, and everything. Some schools don't even get to a certain level. Why? Because the other ones, okay, get all the money and everything. The bottom line is this: Brown versus Board of Education set in stone. It should be left alone. Right? It should be left alone. And then because a wave of conservative justice got in there and now want to twist things around, they're going to twist everything else. And this is a self-destruction move that the country is engaged in. It's not going to help at all. And then here to say that it is against a violation of equal protection. And now tell me how keeping blacks from certain institutions, and in fact, I just can inspire you.
I don't think it says blacks can't get in. That's not what it says.
No. I didn't even know. And we find out that to get into these good schools, rich parents, non-minority parents, pay the price for the kids to get in. So when these rich parents
now it sounds like a poor people problem, not a black or white problem.
So guess what?
How now it's economics.
Yeah,
that's rational basis.
That's
strict scrutiny.
It is economics, right? But that's because of
can you afford it or can you not?
Yeah, true. No. Because it's economic, right? We know where we stand as minority when it comes to economy, right? And say, but they have 100 spots. If we can't all compete economically to get in there,
definitely,
and then affirmative action is not there to bring you in.
Listen,
hold on. We got a comment.
So I agree with what Kenneth is saying. If I'm qualified, forget the fact that I'm black. I'm qualified. I should be in because I'm qualified.
They're not going to let you in.
Well, let me read. Hold on a second. Let me read the comment.
You can qualify all you want. You can qualify all you want. But if you can't get in by a certain process to get in, they're not going to let you in. Your qualification is just
okay. So let me read the comment for those who aren't watching my video and who can't see. So let me read the comment. It says by Kenneth, has anyone ever overtly attributed an admission to affirmative action? I applied to Notre Dame because I met the qualifications. I was accepted based on my qualifications. I graduated because of my efforts. Affirmative action, I believe, says stop dismissing black qualified applicants because they are black, like you have been doing in the past.
So that's what I'm saying, right? Chief is saying, "Oh, they're only letting me in since I'm black, no affirmative action, I can't get in." Here's my issue, right? I think over the course of time, and Kobe alluded to this too, we've been programmed to believe white ice is colder than black ice, right? That's why I beat down the front doors to get into a Harvard, because I've been told I can rule the world if I go to Harvard. Who told me that, right? Why can't I rule the world if I graduate from Howard? So there's a program in place that allows me to get access to your.
I rule the world. I was made by God.
But that's what. So again, I'm beating down the front door to get into Duke and UNC and Vanderbilt and Harvard and Yale, schools that historically, yes, I'll give you that, Chief, that historically have not admitted us, right? So now there's a program in place that says, "Oh, we'll take your race into consideration." And now, "Oh, thank you, I'm at Princeton, I'm at Yale." Why? Because I've been programmed to believe that white ice is colder, right? But when you get out of that institution, what happens? Kobe said it best. You're still an N-word in a coop. You just have a Harvard degree. And guess what? I know this program is in place. And again, Justice Thomas said he had to endure it, right? You're sitting there and I'm reading your resume. I see you're a Harvard grad. I see you're a Notre Dame grad. No disrespect to Kenneth. I see you're a Princeton grad, Yale grad, etc. You know what? Did he graduate from Harvard? Did he get accepted to Harvard because he was black? Right? So as Kenneth said, I completely dismiss your qualifications as a person. I think when I put too much weight, too much credence, too much etc. on that particular factor. I think there's other issues that you could determine, right? That should come into play to determine my readiness to be accepted to this education. I don't know if you put that much weight and credence on my, yes, we figure out other ways, right? Figure out if you want to right your wrongs, figure out other ways to do it. I don't think education is a means, but education is not the end. Because I can be educated, I can be black, I can graduate from Harvard, and I can still be in economic distress. And you just so I wrote my wrong because I let you in our white institution. You walked the halls of Barack Obama and some other black guys, individuals that went to Harvard. So now we've written our wrongs. You're still in the same position you were in before you graduated from here. You just may have different level of access to it. So at that point, again, I think we have to escape that white ice is colder mentality, right? And I think that's what Cole was alluding. Hampton can be just as good as a Harvard if we believe that way. Again, we're so, I'm gonna call it accustomed to. Now we got me started.
No, don't cuss on the podcast.
We're so accustomed to trying to please and appease that I don't feel accepted unless I say I came from yours.
Well,
Right? That's why I'm beating down the front door to get. They won't accept me if I come from Howard.
Well, if I can interject just a little bit,
I'm sorry, buddy.
You good. Yeah, I think though that it was not. I get what you're saying. The mentality of, and I think if I can go ahead and just accredit people I know that graduate from HBCUs, they have a grind that a lot of us, PWI people don't have, right? They are, I'm going after it, right? I'm going after it. And I can do anything. I'm gonna get the biggest case. So I think that is something that a part of that culture. However, it is true though. It's factually true that some firms or some companies will not hire you unless you came from an Ivy League school. That's
the whole reason I'm here.
No, I
don't know what the junior associate does.
Folks. Everybody's not you.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Everybody's not. But if I say that, I might inspire them, bro. That's why I got to say that.
Okay.
And so again, if you don't hire me because I didn't graduate from an Ivy League school, that's a blanket approach. It makes no difference if I'm white or black. If I didn't go Ivy League, I'm not coming anyway, right?
But that's what I'm saying. So like you were saying, like, well, just because you didn't go to Harvard doesn't really stop you from things. Well, some opportunities it does block you, and so that's why everybody's fighting to get into these certain schools. And I think here's my thought on it, because we got to acknowledge, right? This only happens to really like high schools, like Ivy League schools. You got to think about it. Everybody has the same qualifications, right? Everybody has straight A's. Everybody has a high score. Everybody blah blah blah. What the admissions was saying, okay, well, what do we do when everybody has the same thing? Well, we're going to give a little bit more credence to someone who's in a certain race, because we need diversity. And the truth of it is the people who are on our benches, who are on the Supreme Court, the people who are presidents, and who are in top positions, they all went to Ivy League schools. So these people who are going to these Ivy League schools are making decisions on behalf of the country. And what they're saying is that we need more diversity in these Ivy League schools, because guess what? That's going to affect how the rest of the country is going to go. So that, I think, just to get some clarity to it, I think that's what it does hinder you in some way. It doesn't stop you from being successful, from being from making money. It doesn't stop you from impacting your country, but it does have an impact when you only have all white or all Asians, or only white and Asians in Ivy League schools, because that's how our country for so long has functioned. That's who are on all the high positions within this country, and their decisions are going to affect the rest of us.
I can echo that, because and while I agree with Attorney Kobe and Attorney Buhari with the programmation precept wired to think a certain way, which has been a very successful tool used for decades and centuries against minorities. You are programmed to believe a certain way, and that belief affects you one way or the other in the way you comport yourself. What we are here today is also a result of that.
Thank you, Kenneth.
And I certainly agree with you, gentlemen, to that extent.
Now, don't agree, Maya, but we against them. We against them. It is a travesty and an injustice to America.
Just with that aspect, right? Just with that aspect. No, Kenneth, it has not.
The quota system.
Yeah, no, but look at it.
And we gonna
Look at it
turn
this way.
style. I ain't your token.
The Harvard the Harvard institution
Over
that
the
is
flow.
the Harvard institution that is at question in this particular case did not use it as a quota. They indeed use it to ensure there is no dramatic drop off
Right. So
of minority.
let me just read the comments so that everybody who may be listening can understand. So Kenneth said affirmative action has become a quota system when it was initially intended to be a barrier breaker. And law officer Jacoby Willie said, Kenneth, I agree. All right, go ahead, Attorney Bonds.
You're gonna take it won't take me long. I'm gonna figure it out.
So what I was trying to say is that it's being used as it's becoming a quota the way you perceive it, right? But institutions like Harvard, they clearly stated that they have used it so that there won't be a dramatic drop off for minorities in the previous class. There is a compelling interest there, which is tailored with resolving issues of past discrimination, right? And I wouldn't cease to say that we can't just act like we don't see, we don't feel it. I understand the whole perception piece, but Barack Obama would not even have that much of impact if he didn't go to Harvard. Don't I mean there's a correlation there. I'm not saying that because he went to Harvard, he turned out to be a community organizer and then the president of the United States. I'm not saying the cause and effect there. I'm saying there is a correlation there, a highly correlation there that Harvard made his name throughout because of that. And if it feeds back into what my colleagues are saying, the society, you can't change perception that's been there for centuries. You know, and I can speak to extrapolate into another area other than education. We've been wired to deny all that we are. All that I have is wrong. What is good is what the West is presenting to me, and that's all the way
on affirmative action,
from the motherland.
Right.
And it's hard today to change that perception from billions sitting in the motherland in the continent. They're not, because it's been there. Why do I know that it's that way? Because I've been exposed to more information and kind of took a step back, got outside, and look at how we've been programmed to think.
Right. So
the weapon has been successful all along.
Right. I think the key factors here that I think was a point that honestly I was missing, right? Because I was looking at it from a legal standpoint. The truth is, it don't matter where you go.
There you go.
Your success depends on you.
Facts.
Yes.
You know, so I think that's a key factor here, and that hey, yeah, Black people need to start not necessarily depend on white institutions for validation. I agree. I agree with that. But then we also have to think about too, it is what it is on how the world looks at certain schools, right? And so how do we change that? I don't know. I guess that's another discussion for another day. But it is true that by Obama graduating, at least my opinion, it's my opinion that by Obama graduating from Harvard, if he would have graduated from Valpo Law, come on, can I be honest? if he would have been on law review and Valparaiso Law, he probably wouldn't have been president. But the fact that he went to Harvard Law, validated him for a certain part of the country, and that gave him the edge to become president. And so, what happens when minorities have aspirations of being in high positions politically and then through the justice system? How do they get to those high positions without necessarily graduating from the Ivy Leagues? And I think that's the question that we got to really get at.
Your vice president of the United States is not an Ivy League graduate, nor is Amy Coney Barrett. They're not Ivy League graduates, so it can be done.
It can certainly.
But it's arguably she only became vice president because she was black. So
but that had nothing to do with affirmative action.
In a sense, that is what affirmative action is, though. But
no, she was not. Biden didn't elect her as vice president or bring her on as vice president to counteract some past racial discrimination. He did that because of the stats, bro. Like you see what I'm saying? And it made sense that he needed support from the black community. And I'm gonna let y'all go on this. I think part of the reason is we don't understand our value because we've been undervalued so long.
Facts.
Right? We building countries, but we sold on a block for $50.
Facts.
Right? So Biden had to get her out of respect for us. But you telling me we can't get there if we rely on our own institutions.
Facts.
America need black people. Save that soundbite. And
that's the next podcast.
Right. I was like, we can just end on that. America needs black people. That's the ending. But thanks everybody for.
But when we gonna start negotiating like that?
Kobe's out.
Let me get out of here, gentlemen.
Yeah, let's get out of here. This is been a really great podcast. We got attorney Shannon Buari from Indiana. Feel free to reach out to him through AAK Law. We got attorney Whitley from you just do your he's in DC. What's the contact? How do they contact you?
202-499-2403.
Okay, and then we got attorney Mayumbo Ali Banza, who said this is a travesty, and I can't remember all the words but he said, but he spoke with passion today. If you are in the great state of Illinois, please feel to reach out to him at Banza Law. That's MBANZA Law LAW.com. Am I right? Did I get your information right, Attorney Ali?
Yes, including 872-304-0384. 872-304-0384.
Right.
We speak English,
Okay.
French, and Lingala.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Bonza. All right, we are out with Attorney Justin Camper. You can contact me through JustinCamperLaw.com. We have a great episode. If you have other comments other topics you want us to talk about, feel free to put in the comments. But we are out. Enjoy the rest of your day, and always remember to stay legal. Thanks.